Okay. Great. Perfect. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this January 22nd meeting of the Board of Education to order at 6:30. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have any public comment in the room tonight? Okay, seeing none. Anything online? Don't see any there either. Okay. So we tonight have the Give Back Club led by Ms. Shilke here to report out on their fantastic trip that they went on. Come on. I think I would go with that one and use the smaller microphone that's up there. No, the little guy. Yeah, I think you'll be happier with that.
Thank you. So thank you for your time tonight. We're going to try to be super speedy and give you a quick summary of our trip. I'm going to let the team introduce themselves first. We are missing 3 members tonight for various reasons, sports and other things. But I'll let the students introduce themselves, and one of our chaperones is here as well. And then we'll try to share quickly about our experience.
I'm Elias, and I'm a freshman.
My name is Ariana Page. I'm currently a senior at Wheeler, and I plan to go into biology. I'm not quite sure where yet, and then go to vet school.
I'm Thatcher Grimes. I'm also a senior, and next year I'm looking to go to college for something in like biochemistry or research field. And yeah.
Kelsey, I was one of the chaperones on the trip. I graduated from Wheeler in 2018, and I went on the original trip down to Texas for her.
So it was for sure a full circle moment to have Kelsey as a chaperone. She was amazing. And as she said, she was on that first trip to Houston, Texas, and has been wanting to come as a chaperone ever since then. And she was fantastic. I have to brag on her. Kelsey is an amazing nurse at Connecticut Children's Hospital in their NICU. And Connecticut Children's does not hire brand new graduates, but they hired Kelsey because she was that amazing. And she was incredible on the trip because she'd be like, oh, hand sanitizer, anybody? And she said she packed for Armageddon, and she probably did. So it was nice to have her there, and she did an awesome job. So I'm going to, fly through these slides really quickly. This was our team before we left. A little bit of trepidation. We can go to the next slide. We typically fly to these events. Do I have control? There we go. But for lots of reasons, made the decision to rent a van. The local Rotary Club cover a chunk of the cost of the van. And so we drove from here. It was 17 degrees the morning we left. You can go to the next slide. Very chilly. Some quick stats. We had 1 van, 6 students, 3 adults, 1,500 miles plus. 30 hours riding together, which is a lot of hours to be in a van with teenagers, but they were amazing, and countless snacks. So we'll go to the next slide. These are the really important stats. September 27th that should be 2024, not 2025. Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina and caused $59.6 billion worth of damage. We arrived in Boone, North Carolina about 2 months after that. The tree damage was everywhere. Lots and lots of homes were cut off from the road still. And then a number of homes that you'll see still had significant damage. We can go to the next slide, please. This is the church we stayed at. The organization we work with hires 2 security guards who lap the church all night long, which is a beautiful thing when you're in charge of other people's kids. We can go to the next slide. It was extremely cold in the Western Mountains where we were. This husband and wife team were our site leaders. We worked with them the entire 4 days we were there. And the church is the setting that you see here. This is where we slept. We had showers. We were fed 3 meals a day, and a very nice facility, very clean and safe. We were able to help 4 families. We can forward to the next slide. We're just going to really quickly run through. Our first homeowner that we worked with was Mr. John. Mr. John was a Vietnam vet, had been exposed to Agent Orange, and has experienced 8 heart attacks in his time since serving in the Vietnam War. You can go to the next slide. He had tremendous tree damage. These 29+ foot pine trees needed to come down. They were dangerously close to falling on his barns and sheds. We can go to the next slide. And so we did not take this tree down, but our job was to take care of the trees once they had been felled. So you can see they were ginormous. We can go to the next slide. Sorry, I don't have control of that. And so the kids worked really hard to take these huge trees once they were cut, to haul the debris away and the brush. We can forward. I'm sorry. There we go. Again, super cold temperatures. One of the days we worked and did this tree work, we had 30 to 40 mile per hour winds. So this wasn't easy work. Kids were incredible, did not complain. Looking forward to the next slide. And it was a real gift to this homeowner. He said probably 5 or 6 times to me privately that he never could have done the work that the kids accomplished for him, and that it just gave him such peace of mind to not have to worry about these trees falling. So the next homeowner that you'll see, her name was Miss Linda. She's there in the center of this group. She had a little teeny tiny laundry room that had ceiling damage from the hurricane. And so a few of our team members were able to repair her ceiling, and the rest of us just visited with her. And so this particular day, I turned to her and said, you know, we have a bunch of kids from our school who are in the chorus and they'd love to sing a Christmas carol for you. You just name the song and they'll sing it. And I turned and they're glaring at me, you know, like, what are you doing? But they were amazing, sang for her. She cried. And by the time we got ready to leave, she said to the team, she said, this is a day I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. So we did more than just the physical work. There was definitely some emotional healing there too. Yeah, you can continue. Go ahead. Yep. And you can go ahead to the next one. Our third homeowner was Miss Helen. She had some crawl space work and some tree work that needed to be done. We got some secret information that it was her birthday. So our chorus sang happy birthday to her. She also cried happy tears. You can go ahead to the next slide. And you'll see here, this was some pretty gnarly work underneath her trailer unit. And really the kids, there were, I think 4 from our team that went under her house just to make sure that the flood waters that had come up into her yard hadn't done permanent damage. And the good news was that they hadn't, so they didn't have to do extensive work there. But it gave her peace of mind to know that that was checked out. Next slide, doing some tree work. And then the next slide is our last homeowner. So this was Miss Judy May. She was our favorite because her needs were so extreme. So Miss May has been living in her large mobile home since the storm with 9 leaks in her roof. And you can go ahead to the next slide. The water pooled on the roof. We can continue and build up the insulation, which was in her roof. We can keep going. Sorry, I know this is fast. So this is a great picture to see when we arrived. All of that insulation that you see is kept up by plastic, and we would take knives and cut that, and then water would just literally pour right out of the insulation. The amount of mold and damage that she was living in 24/7 blew us away. And the kids really took some time to kind of process all of this. And she was so grateful. So our team knocked it out of the water. You can see here, we finally got up to that, got the ceiling tiles out, the insulation pulled out, and then got down to that roof section so that another team could come in after us. She had a team lined up who was willing to put the new insulation in, but she didn't have anybody who was willing to do the job that the kids did. And I just can't tell you enough about how incredible our students were. They don't complain. They do what needs to be done. They're respectful to the homeowner. They don't stop when it gets tiring and hard. So this picture here shows there was another team that then was working on tarping her roof so that the leaking didn't continue until it could be fixed. But we really gave her a gift that you know, was kind of priceless in terms of helping her to get her feet back underneath her. And she was, again, so appreciative. Next slide. I just want to show you really quickly, one of the things we did on our quote off time, we didn't have a lot of off time, but was to be very intentional about putting some of our team's money into the economy of Boone. The picture on the left is during the hurricane, the entire town was flooded. While we were in Boone, there was a tree lighting. So we went downtown and attended that, and ate downtown. And next slide, you can go to the kids were insistent that they wanted to visit Santa. I was exhausted and less thrilled with the idea. But we went and I said to Santa who the kids were, that they were from Connecticut, and why they were in Boone. And he started to cry. And he said, I can't believe this. He said, those are my friends and my family that you spent the last 4 days helping. And so I was glad the kids convinced me that we needed to see Santa. Good work, guys. And it was great. So go ahead to the next slide, please. And we just want to say thank you to the board for your support. We really appreciate the opportunity to go. I'm very convinced, a good use of our time. And I'm just going to ask the kids very quickly. I'm going to start with our leader, Kelsey, and then the students to just share what their takeaway was from the trip. What's the thing that they feel like made a difference for them or just made them think differently about things?
Takeaway was that you underestimate high schoolers and what they can do. And after a few days of us being there and the kids being so amazing and volunteering to do the trash every night at the church and all the things that they did, we had older gentleman who's also volunteering at the church approach Mrs. Shoki and then our other chaperone Brady and tell them, like, thank them for bringing these kids. Everyone wants to say like, oh, this new generation, like they're the problem, but really the problem is that our generation isn't giving them opportunities like this to be able to go and make an impact. And you just thank us for taking time out of our day and bringing these kids down here and doing this with them. And it was just one of those moments that I realized like I need to help make more opportunities for kids like this because it was really amazing. You know, even like working at a children's hospital and seeing how amazing kids are. I remember telling all my coworkers, like, oh, I'm going to bring 6 high schoolers to North Carolina. And they were like, you're crazy. And it was the best thing I could have ever done. It was so much fun. They're great kids. And it was definitely a trip I'm going to remember.
My biggest takeaway from the trip is how much our small group was able to accomplish and how much we could really change someone's life. We went to all 4 of these homeowners and knocked their jobs out really within a few hours of us being there. And it was incredible for me to see like 9 people go into a house completely destroyed, like Miss Judy's home with all the mold and all the insulation that needed to come down. And we got pretty much all of it out of her house and was able to better her quality of life in such a way that no one was willing to do so far. So I really got to see this small group make a huge change for people's lives.
So my biggest takeaway was seeing how much need there really is, like outside of our small community, and that we can all get so caught up with our own needs and not realize other people's needs and how much it really means to them whenever you really help them. And so it really just taught me to listen to people and be more empathetic and like just try to understand where they come from and what they may need.
I think for me, the trip really showed me like that there are people in need and that there are so many people who like the families who help that are relying on us, and also that we can actually make a difference and actually can do stuff to help. And it was really impactful, like see the work that we got to do and how it actually affected the homeowners and changed their lives.
Our students who wasn't able to be here tonight pulled me aside near the end of the trip and he said, you know, I realized something this week, Mrs. Shilke. He said, I realized I'm so incredibly privileged. And I just smiled. I didn't say anything. And he said, I think I have a new philosophy for living. He said, do you want to hear it? Like, yeah, I'd love to. And he said, I kind of think that if I'm somebody in life who's privileged, that it's my obligation to figure out how I can help people that aren't as privileged. And he said, you think that's a good way to live? And I wanted to, you know, the world to stop spinning for a second. I wanted to be like this right here. This is worth all the planning and the stress and the fundraising, all of that, because we have amazing students in North Stonington, and for them to see beyond themselves and to see other parts of the country and other backgrounds, and then know that they can make a difference in a positive sense was just really exciting. So my takeaway was that these trips are worth it. One of the nights I had asked parents ahead of time to write their students a note of encouragement, and we tucked them into their journals and they didn't know they were there. So halfway through the week, they, you know, took these pages that were taped together and untaped them and read these notes from their parents. And it was really impactful. A lot of the kids were really touched with what their parents had said. But unbeknownst to me, Kelsey had reached out to the Wheeler alumni that had been on the first trip to Texas and asked them each to write a note to me, thanking me for that first trip years ago and talking about what a difference it had made on them. So I sobbed. It was just a really beautiful gesture. And I thought, you know, that was 2017 and these kids still are thinking about how it impacted them and how it changed their perspectives. And so this is a letter I will treasure forever. And I just really appreciate her effort to ask the students to do that. So in closing, we just want to share a letter that the site leader that worked with us all week wrote a letter about our time there. I think some of you have seen it, but I wasn't sure. So I made copies and thought we'd pass them out. But while we do that, does the board or anybody else have any questions for the team?
I just have a quick question. You guys helped those 4 families and I think it's amazing. How did you decide what families you guys were going to help? Was there a group down there that kind of directed you, or? I mean, you guys picked some pretty hard jobs.
So whenever we got there, we were like trained on how to do like the basic stuff. And then we got to our team leaders, and we basically just got who was ever on the list, like for most priority. And so then we just helped wherever our team leaders went on that list.
One of the reasons we've chosen this organization is they're so organized. And so they have a list of exactly who needs help, what help they need. And I think when we arrived, there were 350 jobs left. We only did 4, which just doesn't feel like very many, but it took 4 off the list. Wyatt, no worries. So yeah, so we just, were able to follow their lead. And it's interesting because the first 3 jobs were fine, but it's very fulfilling to be in a place where the need is just huge. And I try to say that, the bigger the better for a group like ours, because we're ready to go. We've committed to being here. So yeah, it was good. Wyatt, I sort of paraphrase, but do you want to give your takeaway really quickly since you just made it in the door? Okay, and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Wahid. First of all, I apologize for my timing about that. My biggest takeaway from the trip is that how privileged we are to be here and have a roof over our heads. I mean, like the houses that we went to were in such bad condition, and we're there, like privileged. We have a roof over our heads. Like I can look up right now and there's no mold in the ceiling, and like we're so privileged. We like take things for granted that we probably shouldn't. So that's my biggest takeaway.
Just wanted to say thank you guys all so much for getting outside of your comfort zone and going to do something that you probably haven't done before. And maybe some of it was uncomfortable or a little scary. And so I appreciate you putting yourselves out there and learning something incredible and representing Wheeler in that way. You're just incredible. Kelsey, thanks for coming back and showing us that like what we're doing here at Wheeler really means something. So thank you. And Rebecca, thanks so much, not just for taking these kids to help other people, but for providing them with these kind of experiences that really changed their lives and really shaped them into the kind of adults that we should all be very proud that you are. So thank you all.
I come home exhausted because I don't sleep for the whole week. Just being responsible and making sure everybody's safe. But when you get a chance, please do read that letter. One of the things he says in there is that North Stonington as a town should be proud of these students. And that's how I feel too. Just cannot say enough about these kids and their commitment. And they still had to do all their work. Elias wrote an English paper at 1 o'clock in the morning. So lots and lots of, it's not just a fun getaway from school. It's a lot of work. So, but again, thank you for your support. I know it was risky, but we really appreciate it. And we definitely feel like it's worth it. Thank you.
I just want to tell you how great, I'm just so impressed with all of you and all the hard work, going down there, volunteering your time. Rebecca, the school is so lucky to have you to give these opportunities to these kids. And from now on, when anybody asks me what's special about North Stonington, I'm going to tell them to tune in on YouTube on January 22nd to this Board of Ed meeting and see you guys right here. Thank you so much.
I'm in real time getting texts from people saying how incredible you are and how moved they are by your experience and what you've done. So thank you again.
Say this really quickly in closing. The organization that we work with has been reaching out to me, and I don't anticipate this happening, but they are looking for teams to go to California once the situation is safe and sift through the ashes of, makes me emotional, of homeowners to try to find things like wedding rings and that kind of thing. And they have school groups that have come before. Again, that's not ever a trip I have done. I've done the disaster response after flooding and hurricanes, but I haven't done that. But the need in our world is just ever growing, I feel like. So that our kids could be a part of helping people get back on their feet. We talked a lot about themes for the trip, healing and hope and what we brought to people. So again, thank you. We're a wonderful place to teach and a wonderful place for our students. So thank you.
Okay. On to reports. Troy?
Superintendent's report. You had it in your packet. And, some of this is going to be overlapped with the budget presentation. Does anybody have any questions on my report? Sure. A couple major points are the CBS money or education cost sharing monies that's not locked in yet. There is a draft estimate for that, and that's money that the town gets to support education. So it may be, right now the projection is lower than we got this current year, but that is not locked in. And they're going to have a new estimate out sometime in February. One of the other discussions is the excess costs for special education that has to do with your spending over 1.5 times the per pupil expenditure on one student, then you get reimbursement for part of that from the state. But it's never been fully funded, and there's always a discussion about how much is going to get funded. Sometimes it's at 70% of that. But the issue, we don't actually have anybody that we're spending that much money on because of the change in special education. But that could change in the future. So for a lot of districts, that's a lot of money. One other major thing we talked about was the idea that when teachers retire or educators retire in Connecticut, they can collect a pension, but then they're inhibited from actually then taking another job in public education because of 45% of the salary. And given the teacher shortage across the state, it could be hard for districts to find people to fill roles, and if they have an interested retired teacher who's willing to come back to work a year or two. But what happens is if they were more than the 45%, they've got to give some of that money back to the pension system. So we talked about that. Talked about can we have fewer mandates and just kind of catch up with the ones that we already have to be doing because we seem to be kind of like treading water to try to keep up with everything we're supposed to do. And a lot of mandates are unfunded. So those are kind of some of
Can I ask you to use that
Yeah.
mic? We're having trouble hearing you.
Okay.
You maybe have one of the weird ones.
All right. Sure. Any other questions on my report before we go to the budget?
I think that we have Chet, who's going to talk to us a little bit about his first
Oh, I'm
board
sorry.
meeting.
Right. I skipped over that. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's all right. Chet, you sent us a report and it was really wonderful and helpful. Are there other things that you want to talk about?
I honestly, the report basically covered. I tried to do that right away so I could make sure it was all on the top of my head. I have to be honest, I was just trying to pull up my email, and apparently since now I have like 4 separate Gmail addresses, I can't find the sent email that I sent to you all between my school, this school, my email. Yeah. But I mean, it was largely a budget discussion, to be honest. The majority of the time was spent going through their annual report, taking a look at what the surplus looks like. They have, obviously it was interesting for me just to be able to see something that was running that was non-municipal, because when it comes to budgeting and that piece of things, I've only ever been involved with an education or municipal budget in terms of even just considering it. And so the process by which, number one, when they make money, they get to keep money, which is kind of, a fun aspect. And they're in pretty solid shape at the moment, largely. And I think this is one of those interesting moments is it's largely due to their special ed services. That piece of it is where they're making almost all their revenue, a huge percentage of it, which I think just goes to show that our process for, perhaps bringing in alternative students and that type of thing can be truly a way that we bring in revenue that would be positive in the long run. I know I did mention I found out it's an RPIP grant. regarding working together. And I did actually reach out to Bob and just say, hey, are you aware of this? And he said he is, and is actually like, I guess I don't know, how open, but he shared it with me, so I assume I can share it, that he's speaking with other towns coming up next week regarding a shared sports facility sort of a thing and that type of piece. So the same idea that kind of hit my head when I was looking at the presentation that they gave is already in the works, perhaps on some levels, at least in terms of discussions. So I do, that was one of the big ones I wanted to bring to the board, because I really thought that it was a worthwhile possibility for state money, but luckily it's already happened. So I don't know if anybody has questions about what happens at the Learn Board. It really, it was interesting, but not particularly in a everybody needs a share sort of interest. Like it was interesting to participate in, but not necessarily there's a whole bunch of information for me to share with you all as board members. So
Thank you for your report and for volunteering to be a part of Learn. Thank you. Does anybody have questions about my report? It was super short. I sent it out to you last week. I'm sorry, last night, not last week. The only thing that I want to say publicly, because it's something different than what we've been doing, and I want to take responsibility for it, is that our finance committee meeting that was at 5:30 today has been hybrid. I messed up because I forgot about the Monday holiday, and we posted an agenda too late to do it hybrid, so it was only in person. I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware of that. Any other questions for me? Okay, Lisa, do you want to share Capital Committee reporting from us? Patrick is also a member, but wasn't able to attend. So I just asked Lisa if she could just catch us up on what's going on.
It's very brief. The Capital Committee invited Randy and Alan to our last meeting while we discussed the school versus town maintenance, what the town would be responsible for, and what would the responsibility of the school be. Sarah is working on drafting a maintenance agreement, which would outline those responsibilities. It'll be pretty clear and concise, and it looks like we'll be coming up with one. So we're meeting again this Monday, and I promise to have a lot more information at the next meeting.
Any questions for Lisa? Share one, silly. Christine's question was just, is this going to be done by budget? And Lisa said,
I don't know.
she's not sure.
I'm not sure.
All right, so now we are on to facility and financial. The finance committee did meet to go over the end of the year projections. Christine, do you want to comment at all on that conversation?
Yes, so we just went, the positive thing is that it looks like we're not going to end in the red. So that is definitely, as Kathy's able to work through the numbers, Kathy and Troy work through the numbers, we're getting closer and closer and closer to where we actually think we're going to end up. Just a couple of things to note. Under transportation, it talked about one less bus being used this year. We did discuss that was proposed during budget season last year. So Troy has a sense that never got cut out of the budget. So that's why it says, even though we knew we were going to do one less budget, it doesn't look like that was cut out of the budget for sure. Because we shouldn't be talking about we're saving from one less budget, because we knew that going in for our planning. The other thing is the discussion about hiring paras. We actually, again, went into budget cycle knowing we had 19 paras, but one of them was being funded through the ESSER funds last year and didn't get moved back into our budget. So we still have hired one additional para, but we didn't hire 2 additional paras this year. We hired 1. And then we also hired 1 additional RBT. So just for clarification on those numbers. And then we just had some general discussion about kind of how it looks with all this red, and, kind of eroding a little bit of confidence with the Board of Finance and with, taxpayers as they're looking at this, and to make sure there's an understanding that We now kind of know what's going on there, and the process that we're putting forward is much different, much cleaner, much more transparent, and feels like we can be very confident in the numbers we're going to be putting forward for the budget next year.
Thanks, Christine. Any questions as you all reviewed those projections? Obviously, these projections are better than the last projections.
We didn't really talk about the budget for next year because we really think that should be a discussion with the entire board. So we didn't want to start having much discussion on that without everybody being part of that.
Okay, Kathy, is there anything you want to add, or do you feel like we're good? Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda. So on the consent agenda are just approval of the January 8th minutes and moving our monthly report to the Board of Finance. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Thank you. We have no old business, which brings us to the new business, which is our budget. So everybody has the version, are we calling this version 1? What are we calling it? Okay. Version 1 of the budget. So one of the things that's different than, again, what we talked about having everybody present, and that's still going to happen. But Troy thought it'd be best to break it up into 2 nights. So tonight, Troy, Kathy, and Randy will present their portions of the budget. And then at our next budget meeting, we're going to hear from the administrators. So do you want to start your presentation and then we can
Yeah.
chat after?
And if you don't mind, I can do it right from here.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, Chat, could you pull up that? Oh, you're working on it. Thank you. Okay, so as you know, we sent you some documents by email yesterday. The board received those and we gave them to you as soon as we had them. We've been working really hard on this budget, trying to make sure that we're paying really close attention to every detail. And Kathy has that in her nature. So we're confident that this budget is prepared way more meticulously than previous budgets. We both have a budget binder with all the backup documents. The administrators worked really hard on their parts and getting input from the teachers. And as superintendent of schools, I felt like I needed to bring to you what is a really robust, healthy budget that would really help the school system. And that includes a lot of increased costs. And I can't tell you that costs aren't increasing when they are. And so a lot of things have gone up. So I realize what I'm presenting to you at 10.3% increase is a very large increase. Okay, but I felt obligated to bring it to you because to bring you something smaller will likely be programs and people lost. Okay, so what we have tonight is to talk about some of the largest increases in the budget, why they are that way. And we have Randy Rumrell, Director of Facilities, to talk specifically about his work running the facilities department in the grounds and some of the challenges and in ways he has troubleshooted those and as his needs moving forward. And I know that is a big concern. It's a big topic of conversation amongst other boards is how we're going to do building repairs and all that. So I think it makes sense to break it up. So we're talking about the non-instructional pieces. And then next time when the administrators come, we'll do the whole budget presentation for you. And they'll all take a piece and really focus on the teaching and learning pieces. Okay. So we have a chart. If we could go to the next slide, Chet. And I'm just going to go through this and then you can ask questions along the way. One of the biggest increase area is salaries. Okay, so we do have an increase of $611,000. That is because the cost of employing people has gone up. Some of it is defined in contracts that we have with the different unions. Included in here is the 2 paraprofessionals, or the 1 paraprofessional and the 1 RBT. Okay, and included also in here is an additional custodian, which Randy will talk more about that. So the increase it's pretty hefty. Okay, so it's $611,000. Now, along with that is an increase in benefits, because of a lot of our employees take benefits. Some of them, they have to get benefits like, Social Security, or, but some take medical benefits. And right now, Kathy and I are members of the Eastern Connecticut Health and Medical Collaborative that meets at Learn. And we're actually going there tomorrow for an in-person meeting, and we hope to get locked down closer what the percent actually will be. But we've been told you really need to budget for 15% increase. That's what they've told us. So that's what we're doing responsibly. We're doing what we were told, trusting the experts, as we said we would do in building this budget. I hope at some point in the budget season, the number will come in lower. I don't yet know. With technology, this includes our sustainable technology plan that Mr. Salino, Mrs. Haggerty presented recently to you. We're really happy to have a plan moving forward, the sustainable technology plan that would supply one-to-one Chromebooks for students on a sustainable level, new laptops for teachers, that some have ones that from 2014, remember, to add new, replace interactive whiteboards as they age out. And so anyway, you heard about that plan, but this number includes that. It also includes a reorganization of software. We really defined what software is instructional versus what software is operational. For example, PowerSchool, Infinite Visions is a financial software that those are operational, right? But other programs like Desmos Math, okay, that's instructional. Okay, so in doing that, we've moved some things that were in like instructional supplies and put it in technology, because that's where it actually belongs. And so it might have been like, used to be a physical textbook. Now it's a digital textbook that is now in this line. So there was some reorganization like that. So those 3 areas are all significant increases in dollar amounts. The maintenance, we've overspent what we budgeted for in maintenance needs, and Randy will talk more about that when he does his part. But we're on $156,000 more for increase in repairs, basically. The transportation, as you know, we have an RFP, that's a request for proposals out for bus companies to bid on our transportation service. It's due at the end of February, and we will see what happens with that, but we are projecting that it's going to go up. So we're projecting $139,000 in addition to what we have budgeted this current year. And hopefully we enter another 5-year contract with the bus company. As you know, utilities, we've talked about electricity a lot, and we talked about it in the finance committee just prior to this meeting. Costs are going up. There's extra fees associated. So we do have to budget enough for our utilities. So that's $119,000 in addition to the current budget. We really are passionate about opportunities for students, right? And one of the areas that we really focused on this year was sports, and how can we provide more opportunities for students through sporting activities. But along with that comes increased costs for coaching stipends, increased costs for transportation to different competitions. And we know transportation is going to go up. So we have to budget for the transportation for sports is going to go up. So, you know, a relatively small amount of dollars compared to the other areas we just talked about. If you're looking for some good news, you want to stretch it a little bit, there's some good news. So to provide more opportunities for kids is less costly than paying salaries or benefits or maintaining the buildings. Okay, and it's about kids, and I would like to remember that as we go through this whole budget process. It's about opportunities for kids. We heard about that from our presentation of the Give Back Club, and that's what we're here for. Special education, yeah, 30,000 goes up. As you know, we've reorganized quite a bit, but even so, you know, we may have an opportunity, or we may have a need where we can't meet all needs in district, and that's a possibility. So we do have to make sure we're being responsible with our budget for what we know. Okay, so those are the major increases, and I could take any questions now or later, and then next Randy would come up and he would talk specifically about the facilities.
Maybe if we can have Randy first, and then we can get to the questions. Hi, Randy.
Hi,
How are you?
Could you go to the next slide, please?
Okay, so discussing anything to do with facilities maintenance with custodial needs, with custodial supplies. Worked with Kathy and Troy, and the needs for things like custodial supplies or any type of cleaning products. We have paper products we have to put in the bathrooms, any type of soaps. There's other things like we have to supply out Kleenex for classrooms. So going over what I projected we've been spending over the year, 2 years I've been here, and then a year getting involved with the budget process. That's why we're asking an increase for custodial supplies. We also need to keep in mind that summertime, we have to get all the right chemicals we need to do the floors. And also just to prepare any other classrooms that might need some other minor repairs or minor cleaning in order to get it ready for the coming year. Uniform allowance, it's in the contract that we have to supply uniforms for all custodians maintenance. So that includes 5 pairs of pants. If they want shorts, they can have shorts, and all of them do take the shorts. Short sleeve shirts, long sleeve shirts, though many of them don't take long sleeve shirts, they just go with short sleeve shirts. And it's 5 each per custodian, so 5 pants, 5 shirts, and also jackets. Now, what I did last year is I got them a nice 3-season winter coat, because whether we're doing anything with snow, if they have to go outside and dump trash or pick up any debris outside. This past year, what I did was I got them a lighter weight jacket. That way they can kind of alternate, so we're not getting real expensive winter coats for each season. So that uniform allowance is $9,600 with the custodians that we do have. And then, of course, building services, general building repairs and services. If you go to the next slide for me on that. So I know this came up before. Now we have 36 individual. These are Bradley faucets. So in our restrooms in the high school, middle school, and also in the elementary school, these are the faucets I was talking about the last meeting I attended. Now this is a 2-person faucet, because you see there's 2 eyes there. These are roughly 5 years old. Components are starting to go. We have to replace the components to make these operate properly. And there's so many components in this faucet just to make it work. Now, the reason why a lot of businesses, schools, buildings go to this, because it's hands-free, it's sanitary, not touching handles, but there's cost to repair these particular faucets. And we're starting to see that because we're having ones that fail. I'll get calls where they'll say, hey, we got a faucet that's continually running. It could be just a $24 battery, or it could be a solenoid. or it could actually be the circuit board that's failing. And all these components cost money to replace. And like I said, the fact that they're 5 years old, we've done really well from what I can see of making these last longer and what these components are intended to do. Next slide. Right down the hallway, those floors look great, don't they? Right down the hallway, you see the light fixture. Those are 2x2 light fixtures. Those aren't your typical type of light fixtures. That's like an LED panel. Each one of those light fixtures cost roughly $72. So when a light goes out, it's $72 just to replace one of those, which we have to order. I did order some over the summer because we had several that were out. I'm down to 3, but I asked Alan to take account of any lights that are out, and we got about 19 of these that are out throughout both buildings. So we do have to start to repair these items. And being at $72 a piece, that's going to add up. Next slide. Okay, that is your that's your smoke indicator or your smoke detector. Those I had to replace 3 so far within the last school year this year, and their life expectancy are about 5 years, and we are at 5 years, so they are starting to go. Unfortunately, these are the little items sometimes that go off at 2 a.m. and I have to report to the school because we have faults, and it's happened quite a bit. So we have to start replacing those, and those are right around anywhere between $98 to $113 a piece. Next slide. Okay, this is a camera. So this is an outdoor camera that got water damage. And I know we discussed this, or I don't know if IT's discussed this, but we have some that are damaged and they do need to replace. I took this one apart with our IT person, Greg Comier. This was in October. We took this apart because we saw water in the lens, and this is not repairable. We have about 3 or 4 of these on the elementary school side, and we have, I believe, 2 that are exactly like this on high school. And then we have some others that have failed for other reasons, but we have to start replacing these. We did drops in the schools. We did, I think it was 13 drops we did in the schools for other cameras that we want to have installed because the school, the principals are asking to have, hey, we need more visual in these areas. So we did the drops over the summer. So the drops are there. All the ceiling tiles are tagged. We went around to check to make sure they were there. And it's just a matter of installing these getting the cameras and then installing them. Next slide. Okay, so when I was talking about the Bradley faucets, this is the circuit board. What happens is these can corrode from moisture, just, change the temperature. In the summertime, what happens, if there's a lot of use, especially the upstairs restrooms at the high school, it gets very humid up there. We can do temperature adjustments or anything to try to help that, but once it starts to get moist in there, these can tend to corrode. But these also have, a life expectancy of about 4 years, and these are starting to go. Now that circuit board right there, which controls those faucets eyes, that's right around $241 just for one. And like I was saying before, there's 36 of these in the schools. Now I'm not saying we're going to go and get all 36, but we have to start to get stock so we can do these repairs. So we don't have students say, oh, I can't wash my hands again, or we want to make sure that they don't have to worry about that. We want to have what we need on hand to get this stuff done. Next slide, please. And now this is a Honeywell Jace. This is kind of like a communication piece when it has to do with fire systems, and next to it would be an LG Jace. This is what communicates to the program that we know there's a problem. And these tend to fail. Since I've been here, we did have to replace one of these. It was actually that one there. We did have to replace it. Just like your computers at home, things are going to start to go on them, whether it's a modem or a battery pack. These are things that we have to make sure we have on hand to repair, or expect, hey, when this goes down, we're going to get a tech out there that day or the very next day replace it. So we're not have anything in jeopardy. The next slide. And this is just, I took a picture of some of the things that I've had to repair over the years. Over to the right, that is a filter for the water system, the water bubblers, the bottle filter systems. Those filters take roughly 3,000 gallons of water, and then they start to go out and get a red. Because the indicators is when they start to go down. It goes to yellow when you have about 1,300 gallons left, and then 3,000 gallons, it goes to red. So I do have those in hand. Those are about $92 a piece, and I have replaced those over the years. So those are things that we have to stock up. We got stone flush valves for water closets, commodes. That's another. Right above that is a piece that we had to have MCON or come in New England Mechanical replace, because one of those boxes in the back with all the wires that controls the heat pumps or the AC units in the classrooms themselves. One of those does about 10 classrooms. We had an issue where we couldn't control 10 of the classrooms at Wheeler, and it's because that failed. Those are not under warranty anymore, because warranty on a lot of these items have already expired. So we're at 5 going on to 6 years in these schools. So these are items that are slowly going to start to fail. We can do what we can to try to make them work, but you can only do so much with computers where you need to replace and get an expert in to actually do work in them. So that was one that we replaced last year. And right over to the left is like a black box that looks like a walkie. That is the battery to the walkies. Last year I had to order some because I had a lot of walkies that were failing, especially the elementary school, because they use them for playground. So when they have to call it to a nurse, or if a student's being dismissed because their parents there, but they're on recess, those issues where the walkies weren't working properly. Not good at a school system, especially if you have an emergency. So I ordered those, and those are, around $120 just to get one of those packs to replace it. The little baggie is the battery for those faucets, and those are $24. And again, right underneath that is that circuit board that I have a picture of. Right on that piece of paper is an LG thermostat control. I've worked on those. I've repaired them. I've had to replace them. Those are things that are slowly going to start to go as well, because I hear from the teachers if they can't control the temperatures, I have to go and take a look at those. So these are just little components that, we're 5-6 years in these schools. Things don't last forever. We want to make sure we can have plenty on hand so we can just resolve any issues in the school to make it comfortable, make it safe. So, teachers can worry about teaching students can be comfortable in the school, and we can just get the repairs done. Just to make the school operate properly. And the next slide, please. And this is just the last slide. So this is obviously, to me, this is kind of what it's about when I go out there and do the sports fields at the end of the day, right before a game is let out. I mean, this is what I look forward to, is to see something look this pristine, for the students to be happy coming out and then having a good place to play and a professional look. So if we can do the same thing here as we can do in the schools, I think it'll make a big difference. So that's my opinion on why we're asking for more in the budget of 26, just so we can make the schools look this pristine. Yep. The other thing too, we were talking about, with the challenges in the maintenance. I did ask Troy if I could hire another custodian, because I did have some challenges with having a full staff here to be able to maintain the school, especially the night staff. I had some issues with some inconsistent staffing. I had an associate that was in a motorcycle accident, so he was out for a while. I did have a lady that was here helping us when she could. She'd work 3 or 4 hours a night, but she got another job, so she couldn't do that. So I informed Troy that there's nights where I might have one call out we can manage, but if we have 2, it makes it kind of hard. I have to ask people to stay a little bit over, or in the morning, I'm coming a little bit earlier so we can clear garbage or quickly sweep rooms. So I asked Troy, I said, it would kind of make sense that we don't have this additional person helping out if we could hire another custodian. So we did hire another custodian to kind of take place of that. The fact that we were having some inconsistent staffing, and I had one of my associates move into a different shift so they could help us with the exterior work. Whether I'm getting called to do something else, Alan's on a mower. This person would come in from 10 to 6 to kind of help and cover that. So he'd help us out with some of the, whether it was raking, trimming, push mowing. So I had to shift some people around in order to make everything flow properly with the people I were calling out. So that's why I asked Troy to add a custodian. And I know the last bullet point there is, with doing that and having someone else help us with the exterior landscaping and fall cleanup. That's why I'm asking that we continue to have this person on shift. That way we don't have to outsource any type of landscaping company, because I know it's come out before. And if it does come to the fact that, we want to budget that in, which isn't in the budget, I just ask that our staff continues to do the sports fields, the 3 sports fields, because, that's something I take at heart. I take pride in doing. My team does too. They want to make sure that there's good looking sports fields to be played on with our students. So I just ask that we would continue to do that piece of it. And if you go to have a landscaping company come in, they just manage the rest of the campus.
Thanks, Randy. Maybe in the interest of not keeping Randy all night, do we want to start with just any questions or comments to Randy, and then you can sort of be done with us? Does that
I
make
just had
sense?
one quick question. The AC heat pump unit that you said does the 10 classrooms, what was the cost on those?
Well, that particular box itself, there's a lot of components to that. That particular box that had to get replaced because it was controlling 10 of the rooms. There's a total of 6 of those at Wheeler, the 6 of them.
Yeah.
And then they branch out to that box, and then that box communicates to 10 of them to work. That job was done last year, and I believe that was $13,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I was just curious, the water damaged cameras, they're clearly outdoor cameras. Do we know why we ended up with water damage on something that was meant to be outside?
The only thing I could tell when I, excuse me, the only thing I could tell when I took it apart is there's like a rubber ring that's inside that's supposed to protect it. It was kind of corroded. Kind of the same thing if you go to repair your faucet at home or anything like that.
So it's just like it hardened, like a hardened gasket sort of a thing, or?
Correct.
Or
It
okay.
got a whole, and not only that, that particular side took the camera out. That was facing the back of the building, which is the southwest part. So it gets a lot of sun hitting around 11 o'clock. And of course, that's the side we also get the wind driven rain. So I don't know if it was a moisture and sun issue. But when I took it apart, that's what happened. It was all corroded in there.
Do we have a plan to mitigate that moving forward? Like if we replace with new cameras, is there a plan to make sure that that wouldn't happen, or is there anything to do?
Well, we would have to spend a lot more money to get really good weather resistant cameras. I don't know if these were cameras that, hey, yeah, they're weather repellent. Don't know if they're really weather that. I don't know if that would work before my time.
I didn't know if we were going to put a plexiglass box around. I didn't know what you do to a camera that's supposed to be outside and still gets through.
Right, and it was in an encasing like that. Just showed the camera. There was a plastic housing with like a seal in there, a gasket. It was in there, but yeah.
I just have a quick question. Not really a question, but just about everything Randy talked about should be being covered. We're tenants in this building, and all of those things are permanent fixtures of the building. So for your meeting on Lisa, if you could get a list of all these things that are going on, and these are all things that are part of the building. We shouldn't be paying for almost any of that.
I think based on at least that initial conversation, we would be responsible for things like the cameras. We might even be responsible for the wear and tear on the faucets. If I understood that conversation properly.
The
but
cameras I
maybe
get
didn't.
because that's for our educational thing. Faucets, no. I mean, you rent as a tenant from a building, they repair their faucets, they repair their heat pumps, they repair their smoke detectors, and then at what point do we keep repairing such expensive sinks, or do we tear them out and put the other style of sinks back in, just because it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I'll get some clarification on that on Monday.
Randy, can you talk a little bit about when, obviously you're running all these through the warranty software and you know what's covered and what's not. So what's your next step when it's time? So these things, all these components, how do you decide where you're buying them? What's your process?
I try to look at the cheapest price out there. Lately, I've been ordering things off Amazon.
Sure, that makes some
Yep.
sense.
There's Granger, sometimes Home Depot, if it's like an urgent need. If I look at Home Depot has it. Good example today. I was out yesterday sick. But when I came this morning, I opened up my emails. I was getting emails, hey, it's hot in here. I can't control my temperatures. What's going on? And now I saw Alan because I knew he was going to have the system up. And I said, what? He said, I can't control these units here. So I happened to hear a beeping. And what happened is we must have a power fluctuation. We lost the battery backup that controls the units in Wheeler. When I say the units, I mean the LG boxes in each classroom. So teachers couldn't control them. So I went online to find out where's this APC battery, because those last around 3 years. I have a 3-year warranty, but work for 5-6 years. So it's definitely done its time. So I saw Walmart had one. I ran right to Walmart first thing this morning, and I went and popped it in a matter of half hour, they all started coming up in each room. So I try to look at the cheapest price possible, because I could just go right to Home Depot or Granger, but they might not have the best price. Like even salt to do the sidewalks. We had quite a bit of a big storm 2 days ago. You can go to Staples and get it, or you can go to W. Mason. So sometimes they almost like gas stations that are nearby. They have like almost like a war going on, and you're trying to see, okay, who has the cheap price right now to meet some.
Do you take the opportunity for things like salt though and go talk to Alan at the town? Is that something that we could be doing
That's
together?
something we could do in the future, depending on what the area, because we're responsible for the sidewalks, but I know what you're saying is.
Right, it's
see if
like a
maybe they
shared
could supply it.
resource.
Right, correct. And that's something we could discuss in the meeting as well.
And then my last question to you, do you have a group of facility directors like you that are your colleagues? Do you guys talk about some of these issues, what you're buying, where people are getting them from? So you're sort of like pooling your knowledge about things?
Back when I worked before, that's how I found about some of these companies. Yes. Recently, have I reached out to them? No. But in the past, I've talked about it with them. Some work at other campuses and schools too.
Yeah, I just wondered if we could learn
Sure.
from others, and maybe they could
Sure.
learn a little from us.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. So the fields, I see that there's quite an increase again in that. So are you anticipating that will be enough to cover now that we're going to get the irrigation to kind of keep maintaining it and make sure that we're really supporting our investment in that irrigation?
Yeah, well, if we happen to get irrigation and everything drains properly, yeah, it'll be greener. It'll look fuller. As long as we continue to put in the proper fertilizer and seeds and maintain it by mowing it. And that's another reason why I wanted to pull someone else on, so we could have more mowing, because like the year we just had mowing, there were some areas that the mow either myself or Alan twice a week because it was growing so fast.
Okay, so you're kind of anticipating that going forward.
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
And I will always ask you this, and so I
Playground?
apologize, but wood chips for the playground,
Yeah.
is that in your
Budget.
yeah, is that under custodial supplies? Where are you? I always like to kind of
Yeah.
see that it's still there.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Any other questions for Randy about Randy's budget? All right. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
I just have one more slide I'd just like to show you
Oh, sure.
before I end this presentation tonight and receive questions. I wanted to just point out that, another hot topic recently has been tuition funds. We talked about it at the tri-board meeting, and I think a lot of us started to think about it a little differently after one of the Board of Finance Committee members mentioned a different way of looking at it. And so I wanted to point out that very likely next year, the town will receive over $500,000 of tuition funds from our students coming from other towns to come to Wheeler. And we love to have these kids, okay? We really do, because they enrich the student body, they participate in student activities. Some of them participate in sports and help us out in that regard. And it's really a wonderful thing. And it helps our school. So it's kind of like a nice collaboration, a great example of collaboration between the schools in town. I think that's one way you can look at this. But you could also make the argument that this is a significant part of our budget ask. And if you considered this money, $510,000, that's like 3.3% of what we're asking for a budget increase, 3.3% of the increase. So theoretically, at this point in time, I'm not really bringing you a 10.3% budget. I'm bringing you a 7% budget. You could make that argument. I understand you can make arguments the other way, but I just wanted to point that out.
I'm not sure that that's an argument that we want to go, that argument has not been well received historically. And what we don't want is someone to say, never mind, forget it, get rid of that program. And by the way, bring us a 1% increase. So let's, love that you're pointing it out. Love that we're continuing to
have
do
to
what we
continue
said
to
we were
stay in
going
the
to do.
presentation.
I think it should. We have to keep that in front of them though,
I think
whether
the
they like
number-
it or don't like
The
it.
number is fine. I think we have to be really careful about how we're positioning it.
Yeah.
I think that you've done a beautiful job growing this program. I think now it's fully realized, right? We've got every class in Wheeler has tuition kids in it. People want to come to our school. It's wonderful. They're utilizing our alternative ed program, our special ed services. That's fantastic. I think we can keep talking about it, but I don't want it to feel used car.
Right. So yeah, maybe it's, yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking about the messaging.
I'm sorry, I
go ahead,
disagree.
Jamie.
I think we
okay.
absolutely need to like shove it in their face that we are bringing this. Sorry, use it maybe a little nicer, but
Yeah, I don't want to be using language like that either.
no, obviously not. But this is a huge increase. What is the point of doing this if we are not utilizing this? And I guess I was a little upset in the meeting when the comment was made that they built us a school. And so that is just, we're paying the taxpayers back, but we're looking to the future. We need to move on from the school. Like, yes, we have it, we're moving on. So now we're looking, how else do we generate revenue? This is the only way. And we can't have these students come in here and be like, oh, sorry, we don't have faucets or sinks. Like, this is crazy.
I
So-
totally agree with you. And this is something we should be so proud of. I think that when the stuff that you're reacting to, I reacted to, Jamie. I don't ever want to hear people say, we built you at school. What else do you want from us? That feels bad. And we do so much, right? And we're giving so much. We're educating the children of our town and in a really successful way too. I mean, we can't shortchange ourselves, but I think that it's important to listen to that feedback because that's the feedback of ultimately the people checking yes or no on the budget. And so whether or not we like or agree or vehemently disagree with the things that they're saying, they're still the ones that are deciding the yes or the no. So what I like to do is try and find ways that we can bring them along, right? We have to build consensus because ultimately we can say, we're going to shove this in your face all you want. If they keep checking no, we don't have a budget. So I'm proud of it. I'm with you. But I really want to, I don't want to shove things. I want to build consensus. I want people on board. I want people to say, we're so proud of this school too. You're doing a great job. But I think that that's the way, if we made the decision all day long, but you know what? We don't. So we have to find a palatable way to gain support, not just from the Board of Finance, but honestly, from the taxpayer at large. You want to use your microphone?
I guess we have to decide, are we here to just appease the Board of Finance or are we here to give the taxpayer who does the ultimate voting, which we have been getting support from, to get the right budget in front of them? And they need to know that we are bringing in $510,000. We can't continue to hide it and say, well,
I don't think we've hidden it from day one. I
mean,
think that this tuition program we have highlighted in the budget every year, and it's a great thing. But this slide historically has been one that draws controversy and downgrades what it is that we're doing. So be proud of it. We love it. It's so great. I don't think that we want to say, well, if you look at it this way, I'm bringing you a 7% budget.
No, I get that, but I also think that we're a little unrealistic to think we're going to get all of these people to shake their heads along, go, you guys are wonderful. This is great.
We don't need all
Our
of them.
number one job is to support our school and bring forward support for our school, regardless of if they like it or don't like it. They have to see the real numbers, what we're doing, the impact, so that somehow we can get it to the taxpayer. That's the
And the
ultimate
taxpayer has
goal.
to ultimately like it. And so that's why it's nice to look at the Board of Finance as like sort of like a test group. And we have to be hearing, I mean, our Board of Finance is pretty diverse in terms of their makeup, both in political party, in sort of place in life, who's got kids in the school, who doesn't. They really do. And they speak to people. And so I think that we have to get people to say yes, not just them, the community. We need them to say yes. We should be proud of what we're doing, but I also think that we have to be respectful in our ask. That's all. Troy, do you have other things that you want to say before we start asking questions about this budget?
I wanted to comment.
Go for
I
it,
wanted
Lisa.
to comment on this discussion.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I feel it's very important to have a collaborative relationship with the Board of Finance as they do give us direction and move our budget forward. However, and I don't want to say it was 10%, now it's 7% because we're bringing in these funds. However, I do feel that the $510,000 belongs in our budget in some way. I mean, we have about a $600,000 increase just in salaries. So I think it is important to not just to highlight that we're doing this, and it is a great thing, but we're doing this and it costs money. It costs money to do this. And this is the money that we're bringing in, and we need to find some way to have some discussion that feels collaborative, that feels like we're working together and that we're finding some common ground to get some consensus to move that into our operating budget.
Troy?
I hate to stay on the topic, but I just wanted to also point out, just to you, we'll talk about like what later is happening, but this current year, as you know, we kind of assumed we'd be getting some of those dollars back, and we haven't. So the town actually budgeted for them to get $304,000. They're getting 480 this current year and keeping it way more than they anticipated. So I'm not trying to be uncollaborative. I'm just trying to be transparent and honest about the dollars and where they're going. And I want people to acknowledge where the dollars are going.
I think acknowledging it is important. And I'm not sure that anyone that sat at that tri-board meeting wasn't acknowledging it. Do I think it's going to be enough to submit to have people cheering about 10.3? I don't.
Yeah.
You have to use your microphone.
I don't think we're all settling on 10.3. It's just that I think we're talking about how do we really make sure we get recognized for this tuition. And if we start talking about cutting programming and everything else, how many people want to send their kids to North Stonington?
Yeah, agreed. Okay. We've just turned yours up. That's all. It's a funny joke we played at the beginning of the night. All right. So I think we had a very brief conversation about how to sort of peel this back during our finance committee meeting. And I think the thought is because we still have that second piece to hear. And because Troy's not saying that this is necessarily where he believes that it will stay. He was saying to us earlier, and I think you maybe started to talk about it here, that he felt like as a superintendent, this is his responsibility to bring us what he believes the school needs to realize all of these things. But that he also understands that this is probably not the reality of where it will end, but he wanted us to see it. And so I don't think that tonight we have to sort of go line by line and say, what is this $1,500 increase in paper? I think that Troy is prepared to make some suggestions to us next, but I wonder do people have questions about sort of the pieces that were covered tonight and sort of like the bigger issues? I'm looking at that budget challenges and largest increases chart, and I wonder if anybody has questions or comments about that? Oh yeah, that slide that's up there.
Yeah,
That
I
one.
I went back to it because it seemed like
Thanks, Chet.
it seemed like the place to be
I'm
for
like,
the
yeah, that
discussion.
one.
I had a couple of questions. First, the contracted services and special education and the increase there. We currently have 68,000 that go to contracted services, and that's outside services that are still coming in that aren't covered by our RBTs and the BCBA that we hired. Is that?
Yeah,
Do
we do contract some services out still, even though, yeah, we do a lot internally, but we have a need for some outside services. Yeah.
And do we have reason to believe they're going to increase in cost based on students who are moving into the? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it wasn't just a general increase, but was like a specific attached to something sort of in an increase process. I also want to say I think it's amazing the way that the middle school sports are expanding. I think it's great to see that we have the sixth graders participating, that we have cheerleading back at the middle school, that I know there's talk about track and field coming in the future years. I know that seems like an increase there, but I think that those are one of those things that can really make or break some kids' educational processes. It's that stuff that even though it might not be all of our personal kids or however it might happen, some kids stay in school for sports, and that's a real thing. And having more of that and more robust programming, I think, is really important. I know our kids travel a long distance for middle school at the moment. And I know that there had been talk about possibly doing things to mitigate that in some way. And I guess I would just throw that out there as a, if we're increasing programming and the cost of transportation and things, that might be a spot where we could save by not driving to Ashford or wherever it is that we're going with the middle school on these different things. So.
I have a couple quick questions. The presentation we got on the tech purchasing was an increase over last year's budget of 64,000. So I'm just wondering, when we're looking at the tech budget, a $287,000 increase, what else would that be? And if you don't want to answer it right now, but it's just a big number to me. But that was already,
So the tech,
oh, right.
yeah, so this tech budget, this does include, right, the software licenses, replacement of some equipment, the technology plan, sustainable technology plan for the Chromebooks, laptops, smart
Right.
boards, docking stations, all that was presented to you. And it does include some computer and network repairs. We're hoping that we can repair our infrastructure for technology over time, over an 8-year period of time, but budgeting in what we need, like 1/8 of the cost for repairing additional switches and battery backups, so we don't get into a dangerous situation again.
All right. So I guess I'm just confused on that.
Oh, and also, I'm sorry, also in this line is in this technology line is the learn tech support.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So when you talk about the computer and network repairs, we budgeted 15, but we spent, we're forecasting 3,200. So I'm just wondering, and now we want to bump it to 40. So if there's some repairs and things that need to be made, and we're looking
These are
like,
these are replacement of switches and battery backups. We have several of them in the district. And we need to have some kind of plan to replace them, so we don't get in a situation where we no longer have internet or phone service.
no, I understand that. I guess what
Yeah.
I'm looking at is
Okay.
this year's budget has money in it on that line item, unless I'm reading that wrong, which is very possible, but.
They had, yeah, I think it was 15, right? It was 15,000 for the current budget on that
And we've
line.
spent 3,200, so why aren't we doing some of that in this year's budget? So that we don't have to make next year's so large on that line item.
But looking at technology as a whole, we've spent 75,000 on equipment, which was partially the switches, and we only had a budget of 55,000. So where we underspent on the line item you're asking about, we overspent. on the line
Okay,
item.
that makes sense. All right. And then the 98,000, that was like partial year for Learn. Because Greg didn't leave till partial year, so we still anticipate it still being 98,000.
We're adding a few days of support in there, thinking that we will need that. However, we realize that number may come down when, if Learn gets the grant they're going for, that number could come down.
Okay, but the number we're coming up with is based on our
It's-
usage now taken to a whole
We're
school year.
budgeting for 4 days of support right now,
Okay,
because we think that we will need that
okay,
for like that kind of tech support.
okay. I just asked that we look at that one a little bit closer, because again, the presentation said it was going to be a $64,000 increase to purchasing and a 287, even with the 100,000 for Learn, seems like a big jump up. to
Well,
me.
and shouldn't the Learn take the place of the salary that was our IT director and therefore come out actually as a gain when it comes to an increase? Because if we're
We
spending.
should come ahead there, but I don't know if that was I'm assuming that was captured up on top already and still showing us. a
Well, I
quote.
guess that's why I'm wondering if it's a 299,000 increase on this, is that taking into account the fact that we saved 160 on the IT director plus benefits aspect of things, and then we added 100? Or is that just, we added 100, but we took that other piece out of a salary line item instead of out of technology? Because that might look better if it's saying, hey, we're replacing that 98 in a salary aspect, because it's really, I mean, it is contracted services, but it's replacing that piece, or at least verbalize how that happened when we're giving that presentation, so that what they're hearing is, hey, listen, we saved this on the salary line item, replaced it in the technology item, and that's why this looks like a larger increase than it would have otherwise.
Yeah, like kind of show what that salary line item was, even though overall there's still an increase in the salary line item, still show that's a
There's an
director's
impact.
position that's been removed. And I think a lot of times people think we're top heavy. So if we can show that we're removing a director's position, I think that would help a lot, Troy, for your presentation.
Sorry, are we talking like the under salaries? It would fall under the administrator's salary? Where do you?
I think it used to, and
Oh, it's under
Kathy moved it this
central
year.
Okay.
Is that right, Kathy? It used to be with the central office salaries, and you moved it to put it under technology this year? Is that?
No, we were talking about maintenance, that Randy, that I.
You know,
The IT.
Yeah.
To
No, I
Jamie's
didn't move the
question
IT.
though, if it was Greg getting paid under central office?
Yes.
Then why didn't that number go down a lot more?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Well,
questioning.
he was paid through the end of November. He
No,
had
but
enough-
last year we budgeted for him.
Right.
So this year there should be a lower budget under central office. Because we fully budgeted for him last year and he was over $100,000.
The 54,000 there as a
Right.
decrease would be the second half of his salary
Correct.
going forward, but and then the increase to central office is all, well, that's not contractual though. That's all at will employees at central office, right?
I think, to somebody's point, it would be better if Troy and I worked to break that out so that you could see it clearer rather than.
Okay.
you know.
And I would just be curious because I know in the past, we always had a separate space for raises that were given versus having the raises included for the at-will employees, because there was a random category that was like what could be given at the end of the year for the following year for those employees. I just want to make sure, like, so what we're seeing in central office here for an increase is expected raises or is a change in,
No, it's expected raises.
okay.
Right.
I'm still confused about that
Yeah,
too.
let me,
Yeah.
we'll go back through it.
Okay.
You know, we have many changes to make, so we will make sure that we do that. You got it. Yes. Absolutely.
Other questions? Comments?
Sorry, we have one other question. Where does Randy fall? Is he central office or is he?
So, yeah. So I put him in central office for
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
And I think he was there for last year's budget, but he's being charged differently. So to your point, I'm gonna make sure
Okay.
that we know.
Okay, thank
you. Yep. Because we could drive ourselves crazy guessing. Yes.
So, and it sounds like this maintenance line item is likely to change
Yeah, it will be a
hopefully
shuffle, but we
after
will
there's that final conversation with the capital committee. Bob and I are going to sit down. He's listening now. He's taking note of our numbers and what we're putting in for maintenance so that he gets a sense of what that would look like for him.
And one more small one, sorry. It's a really small line item, but Randy had talked, and I know he's not here. Are you still here? You talked about the uniforms and stuff, and I'm just wondering, do they need brand new uniforms every year? Okay, so, and they're gonna cost that much more this year, we think? Okay,
And you're budgeting for one more, right? One more staff person? Right.
okay. If you get a good deal on them, can you buy like 5 years worth? No.
Sizes. Right.
Some people expand.
Anybody else? Troy and Kathy, do you have other stuff that you want to say about this?
No, I would just say that, you know, give me some grace, my first time through.
You're doing a great job.
And it's a different philosophy than I think we've used in the past. I think we've kind of gone with let's look at the big picture, and now we're trying to make sure that the little pieces of the big picture all fit together. And make sure that if I get hit by a bus, that the next business manager will be able to come in and say, I know exactly what she budgeted for. So that's our goal, is to be transparent.
We don't want
Yeah.
that. We appreciate the thought, but we don't want that.
I'd like to just say it's a real pleasure working with Kathy. And she's an excellent, intelligent worker. And sometimes I'll give her something to do. Hey, Kathy, can you do this for me? And she goes, yeah, no problem. And like 5 minutes later, I have it in my hand and it looks really good and detailed, and she's very capable. So I think we're in really good, I know we're in really good hands in terms of business management right now.
All right. So thank you for your reports. I think the breakout of central office will be really super helpful for us. Troy, do you have anything else you want to say about budget tonight?
I'd just like to say, I realize that it's a challenge ahead of us. And I appreciate you being willing to take on the challenge as volunteer Board of Ed members. Know that we're gonna work really hard as partners throughout this. And I do take your feedback seriously. And I appreciate that because I do want to make sure that people who are listening to the budget, and we hope will ultimately support the budget, have the knowledge that they need to make a decision. So we've got good work ahead.
Okay. So we will hear from the administrators on the 5th. Is that right, Troy? On the 5th?
Yep. On February 12th, the administrators will come. We'll do a complete.
On the 12th or on the 5th?
Is it the 12th? Or is it the 5th? I was thinking it's the 12th, the second meeting, second Wednesday.
You're right. It's the second
Yeah.
Wednesday. It's that we have an extra Wednesday in January.
Yeah.
It's the 12th.
So-
Perfect. The 12th.
So we'll do
Great.
a complete budget presentation for you. We won't focus that much on the things we talked about tonight, but we'll still kind of cover it all, but mainly it'll be focusing on the teaching and learning part that the principals will talk about.
Troy, do you anticipate bringing back to us some of those changes that you just talked about? As we get into the 12th, we're getting pretty close to
Yeah.
our presentation to the Board of Finance.
Yeah, I can, Kathy and I will look at some of the things we talked about. Maybe we'll be able to adjust the repairs, the facilities lines a little bit based on what we find out from the town. But I think what Lisa, you said about having some options, I think we don't have much time to come up with options. And I think I can be prepared with some options at that meeting.
That's great. And one of the other things Troy talked about in the Finance Committee meeting that I don't know that we've ever said in this meeting is that bus RFP is coming back like in late February.
I believe it's February 21st.
So maybe we'll have
We may have an idea.
like a more solid number soon. It probably will. Yeah. Brian, I'd like you to turn on your microphone and make that suggestion.
Many cities will make their students walk if they're within 2 miles. I mean, you could always make that suggestion.
Anywho, on to our next agenda item, calendar. So the next meeting's on the 12th and not on the 5th, like I told you it was. And I think that's really everything on our horizon. I think Troy and I had talked about, because we're splitting these up, it may require us throwing in an extra meeting before our Board of Finance presentation. But I think it's too early to know.
Yeah.
Any comments for future agenda items?
The Board of Selectmen had their meeting last night, and I know there was a discussion regarding a voting ordinance that would affect the composition of this board. And I do believe that at some point as a board, we should probably talk about that as well, because it does affect us in
Sure.
many ways. So I think that it would be disingenuous of us to not address it in our board, especially if it's going to be addressed in other boards and could possibly affect how we operate moving forward.
So how typically that stuff, right? Like we wouldn't take action on anything. So the action is for the Board of Selectmen to
Correct.
decide then to move something to town meeting. In what capacity would you like us to talk about it?
I think if nothing else, for a discussion on the record.
Okay.
And I get that they want to take into consideration other people within the community. I completely respect that, but at the same time,
I think more conversation is better. More people hear it.
so
That sounds great. What's that? Well, it's not on the agenda. So, I mean, if someone wants to make a motion at 8 o'clock to talk about it, I'm just not sure. Yep. 2 Tuesdays.
I make a motion to add item 11A, discussion of the makeup of the Board of Education.
Second,
second,
all those in favor? Oh, any discussion? All those in favor? I'm sort of opposed. I don't see the point, but okay. Any abstentions? All right. Brian, go.
I mean, I find it curious. I'm curious at how this all kind of came about and what was the driving force behind pushing for this change. I look at this board and I see people who I know I can disagree with and do disagree with at times, but also people who I respect deeply. And I know that we can work together to find consensus to come to common sense solutions that are pragmatic and practical and in the best interest of our students and the community. As we begin to polarize politics, if one party does gain a majority, they can then use that to push an agenda that isn't always in the best interest. And we know the pendulum of politics swings. And just because you might be in power now doesn't mean you will be in 10, 15 years, when it could then ultimately start to, erode the good work that could be done one way or the other. So I'm concerned that there is, I don't know if it's a knee-jerk reaction to something, or if it is a, personal agenda that is driving this. I think that this is something that, if we are going to be honest with ourselves, we need to look at, this has worked for this town. This has brought us together to make sure that we are working together for the community.
Brian, I hear you asking a question. Are you asking me because it's my husband that brought
No.
it forward? Or are you asking it sort of like
Oh,
a
no,
rhetorical?
Stephanie, if I had a question, I would
global-
ask you the
Oh,
question.
I didn't know. Am I supposed to do you want me
No.
to answer? Or I
No,
don't.
there was no question. It was, I
well,
was,
you said you had a question. You wondered.
I
why,
wonder
and
what was driving this. That's
I can
really what it
speak a
was.
little bit to it, but I'm not sure. I mean,
if it's not your
my-
place, I wouldn't expect you to speak on
I guess
somebody else's behalf.
Well, and it did come out of a Republican side, right? So I'm not sure where it came from either, but I have to kind of echo what Brian's saying. I don't know if how we can express that to the selectmen when they're meeting or something, but I agree. I think there's many times we've looked around the table and I've not known what your political party is, but we have to work together, and being balanced always keeps us working for the student first. And I also think it's hard to get volunteers, and when you have to campaign, not something personally I'd ever be interested in doing, is campaigning, putting money up, doing all of that. And then to Brian's point too, I don't see the point of having unbalanced boards. I think it has worked. So I'm not sure where it comes from, but just because it did come from Republicans, just to
Well, I
let
think
you
it
know,
came from
as
a
member of the
Republican,
RT.
right? And not representing, and that is something that I know that Judy feel really strongly about, and that I know that Brett felt like really strongly that he had to say, because he came home and said to me, I have to make sure that no one thinks this was an RTC thing, because it actually isn't. And so
Okay.
he was, I don't know, Brad, did you listen last night? I know that, so I guess the first thing is, right, not coming from the Republicans, coming from Brett as a selectman. Certainly not the first ordinance change he suggested. Also, Christine, you mentioned, I don't know how we get word to them. A number of us made public comment. I would think that would be how you would get word to them. Judy, myself, Brian, Jamie.
Chet. Yep.
I didn't hear yours.
I wrote to Bob, and he shared it
Got
with
it.
the selectmen, but I didn't specifically request for it to be read aloud.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, Christine, I would think that would be the way that's how we get our voice in front of them.
I want to echo all these statements. I think we work well together. We have as a board for a long time. And I think that was one thing that Alex kind of said, as how well we work together. I think we also agree with Christine. It's so hard to get candidates. And if people want to be on the board, I think we need to kind of talk about that process of how do they get on the board. And there is a selection process, and it is like a primary, just like any other voting. And so I really hope that we can, maybe through this, we can really work to educate people on how do you become involved if you are so inclined to become involved, and that it doesn't require an ordinance, and we can still have a very functioning board.
So because I have a differing opinion to those who have been expressed, I'll express mine, not being an expert on the topic. Just obviously, I mean, Brett talks at home about this. So in terms of origin, this is something that he's been talking about for a long time. He mentioned it last night at the public meeting, that it often, when you talk about an ordinance change, to be really careful about timing. He actually didn't think for 1 second, mostly because there was sort of bipartisan pushback, that the timing of his suggestion could appear problematic or political. And he was sort of caught off guard by that, because people on his own town committee resisted it as well. So this is something that he's been talking about for a while. I mean, Bob would tell you that, Nicole would probably tell you that as well. And it was just in the interest of timing, if this is going to be changed, the process takes so long, and it would have to be done well before a municipal election that happens every 2 years, one happening in November. And so that is my understanding of how it came up now. And I can tell you that never in any conversations, and I feel like I can sort of say that I'm comfortable saying in any conversations that we've had privately between the two of us, that it's never been your board is this, your board is that. In fact, our board is really not one that's ever been discussed, because the driver behind this isn't about changing the board, but rather voter access. And so I have noticed that in the way it's been presented, people are hearing it like a way to interrupt a way a board is functioning. And I think that he heard that last night as well. And I think is working to put together some materials that'll help to better explain the why. I think that it's not meant to say that we have people banging down the doors to get on boards, although historically the major boards don't have a shortage of people that want to. It's not like putting someone on the board of zoning appeals alternate, right? Like that's a tough one to fill. But you don't see vacancies on the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, or the Board of Education. I think the idea is that we are, by all accounts, although this year Patrick's seat, because he filled a vacancy, will be one that is quote unquote contested. The way it works is that every 2 years, there are 4 of us that are up for reelection, and our respective town committees each have their own endorsement process. And effectively, once you get the endorsement from your party, you are seated. Now, someone else could run, someone could primary, get on the ballot. An unaffiliated or some other party could get their percentage of signatures and get on the ballot. But as a voter right now, you are only allowed to select 2. So there's 4 seats available and you select 2. And so there's 4 seats, you can only pick 2. You're not really electing as a townsperson who's seated on your board. And so the idea is if there's 4 people running, you get 4 votes. And that creates a pathway for people to be electing, not just from our committees, but the general population to be electing people. Now, the fact is that that might not change, that there's only 4 people running for 4 seats. Nothing would change. It's 4 people, 4 seats, everybody's seated. But it does allow an opportunity for someone who doesn't come out of party endorsement to potentially have a greater opportunity, or maybe put it on equal footing with those of us who do get endorsement. Because as we've seen, people vote along party lines. In some ways, I think it's a protective factor in keeping our board from swaying too far one way or the other, because I not only have an opportunity to vote for my party candidates, but maybe I have an opportunity, if I'm voting for 4, to vote for someone of an opposite party that I feel maybe is less extreme than the other candidate that's running. So I really feel like it could act in a protective way. In no way is it meant to disrupt us. In fact, everybody keeps saying balanced board, and I feel like we've said this a lot, but I'm going to say it again. We are not a balanced board by ordinance. We are a board of minority representation. That would never change. We look balanced, although right now we're not really. We look balanced because every 2 years, each party can put 2 candidates forward. And so while our parties can certainly endorse unaffiliated, I think that all of us that are part of parties know that our parties would not likely endorse an unaffiliated. What's that?
Can they?
Yes.
Can both parties endorse unaffiliated? Or
You
is
can,
that-
right? The Democrats,
Democrats can.
and the Republicans can as
They
well.
can? Okay.
But I think there's some language in everybody's bylaws.
They can, but the likelihood.
Right.
Right.
Because I think the
doing so.
language in the bylaws talk about if there's no qualified candidate of that party. And so I guess I was surprised that it was viewed as nefarious and scary and as a way to like break up things, but really it's just an opportunity for the town to have more choice in electing who's sitting here. And it does make me feel a little vulnerable. If I were to have to actually campaign and run, that's scary. Or if I would have to be accountable to the community for a vote or a decision that I made, that's a little scary. But in some ways, I guess that's sort of part and parcel with the job. So I'm actually really pro this. I think it's great. I think the last ordinance change that we made for the selectmen, I thought that was really positive, and it didn't cause any chaos. It really didn't. There was a campaign. They had to campaign the first time the ordinance ran, and then 2 years later, there weren't additional candidates. It just, I don't think it will be as earth shattering as people are saying. I think it just makes our system better.
I guess I just have a hard time with the idea that voters don't have choice. I think that's I've never walked in on that aspect of only having a certain number of votes for one of the offices or another and thought, my goodness, I'm not even electing these people.
But you're not. So it's okay that you feel like that, but you're not.
I could choose to elect multiple people out of multiple parties and there's no problem, or an unaffiliated. And I often vote for unaffiliated along the way just because I think that it's important to push those in.
That's not what I mean.
But what I'm saying is I am voting and I do have a choice.
Your vote doesn't count effectively in the way that we're doing
I
this.
really disagree with that.
For this board, your vote doesn't. No, they'd still have to do the thing. So an unaffiliated person or a person of another party, or
but that
an extra
unaffiliated person can run and
They can
I can
absolutely do that.
vote for them and they can get more votes than one of us and they can
They
be
could.
elected.
So
Which
I think,
means that if there's somebody there to vote, yeah, I'm voting. I think it is a disservice to state that voters don't have a choice. I don't believe that to be true.
I think that the issue has been that, Chet, when you vote for the Board of Education currently, if there are 2 candidates, well, there are 4 candidates, right?
So
right now there's been 4.
and I get to vote for 2.
Right. You get to vote for 2.
Now, if
Everybody
there's
gets
5
to vote
next
for 2.
time, then I still get to vote for 2.
You do, but you don't get to
Okay.
vote for as many people as there are seats.
But I get to vote for 2.
So if
I'm
every
voting,
resident
and I
only
get to
gets-
choose an unaffiliated person, or I get to choose my
Sure.
party. So again, you may say you don't get to vote for every seat that comes onto the Board of Education. That's absolutely true, but I don't get to vote for everybody who goes on the select. I don't get to vote for
You
everybody
do.
on everything. I don't get to vote for multiple people for president. I don't get to vote for multiple people. I'm voting
Well,
for my
there's
2
one,
people.
there's 1 seat for president, right? So you get 1 vote. There's 2 seats for selectmen, so you get 2 votes. There's 1 seat for first selectman, so you get 1 vote. So there's 4 seats for the Board of Education and you get 2 votes. So the reason why the Board of Education was quote unquote targeted here
But if we have-
is because
if
we
we
are
have
an
4
outlier.
So what you're.
or
looking
choosing
for-
only to vote for 2 because of party
Right.
lines.
Sure, you could do that. But
So
you mentioned party
what-
lines.
So the aspect that comes into play with that, though, and I guess the secondary piece of this in my mind comes into the fact that what you actually do is create a situation in which I think that we're skewing the board far further toward unaffiliated voters. Because if I'm walking in there and I'm saying I won't vote for the opposing party because I vote along party lines, and I have 4 votes, who am I going to vote for? Oh, well, I'll vote for the 2 in my party and then the unaffiliated. And then the person on the opposite side of the aisle does the exact same thing.
You don't have
because
to
they
use
won't
all
vote
4.
on the opposite one. And so they're going to turn into a space where all of a sudden everyone's just throwing that extra vote in on that unaffiliated without actually thinking through it, with the idea that all of a sudden you're going to bump the person perhaps in your own party off of that line because of this happening. Like that's
A roundabout way of.
it's setting that up to work in the opposite direction, I believe. And do I think there should be?
I vehemently disagree with, and I did the last time too. These same arguments came up last time because it was the same thing, right? If you're running 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats for selectmen, and there's 2 seats. And the first selectman is a Republican. Only one of those Republicans can be seated, right? But both Democrats could be seated because you have to have minority representation on boards. So you couldn't have 3 Republicans sitting on the Board of Selectmen. There is a chance that if people did just what you were doing, right, that you end up splitting that Republican vote and people hit the Democrats, and all of a sudden you've seated the 2 Democrats and the Republicans have kicked themselves right.
One
right off
one
of
of
that.
those is somebody going to opposite parties, and one of those is somebody going to an unaffiliated. I think there's a significant difference between.
I guess what I'm
those two
saying is
jumps.
this was the same argument, Chet. It's the same argument that was made at the last ordinance change. And
I
I
think
get
that
it.
The
I just
example you
don't
gave was
think
just
that the-
significantly different, though.
I don't think, I guess the situation is different. The argument is the same. And I don't think that there's any consequence that supersedes the idea that I think that every voter should have the maximum choice and the maximum impact in their vote. So I get that you and I feel differently.
Do we feel like voters are coming out of the woodwork saying, I don't feel like I have a vote on the Board of Education? Because I haven't heard a single human in this town say that.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, maybe we're talking to different people, but I often talk about how it's strange how we get here. Yeah. I participate in those conversations. I think it's really strange how we get here. Yeah.
I think it's great that all of us are sitting here talking about our opinions. The only thing I want to say is nothing is going to change here, talking about it on the Board of Education.
So true.
But I urge everybody to attend the next Board of Selectmen meeting, whether you write a letter like all of us did last time, or whether you're there in person. And if everybody make our voices heard to the selectmen and they can make a decision based on what they see fit, whether to move it to a town meeting or whatever, but as long as we all show the support of how we feel about this, I think that's the best way to go rather than causing a divide on the board.
I don't think it's a divide. I think it's okay. It's okay to disagree. Like we fundamentally disagree on this issue. Judy, did you hear what I heard last night and that they were going to vote next time? Because I think that's what I understood.
I think Brett was going to make a better presentation next time. I didn't 100% get the sense that
I would watch the agenda. I think there might be a vote, and the vote would be either to move it to a town meeting or not move it to a town meeting. So I would make your public comment. And then obviously if it goes to a town meeting, that's where you have to convince the people at the town meeting.
I want to put in my 2
Oh,
cents.
please do.
First and foremost, I realize that we aren't a balanced board in ordinance, but we are in practice. The 4 and 4, I like that there can't be more than 4 of one party. That
There
no,
can't be more than 5.
well, that's not been our practice. Our practice has been there's not going to be more than 4 of one party. There just isn't. That's our practice. Yes. That's what I'm
Well, I
saying.
think
Yeah.
it,
And that's the way
there's
it's
4
always been.
Republican seats right now, right? Because Lisa was seated as a Republican who then unaffiliated
But I am in a Republican seat
Sure.
for this term.
for this term.
So
But
that's-
next term that could change
Yeah, well,
because
that does
Patrick's
not
seat will
make
be
Me
contested.
changing unaffiliated doesn't make us unbalanced. As long as there's not more than 4 of one party.
Right.
It's my
So
understanding so
the
anyway.
rule is no more than 5.
Okay, that could be the rule, but
Yeah.
it can be written in an ordinance to have no more than 4 of one party.
It totally can. And we talked about that last night, that you
Yeah.
could write that.
Yeah, I listened to the meeting. So that being said, I, as a voter, I very much want to vote for every single seat that's on the ballot. I want to vote that way. I remember when, well, I was there for the 2 ordinance changes. The first one was the first selectman seat, when there was 2 first selectmen running, two people running for the first selectman. One of them won. And then the second one, the loser of the first selectman race, if they got more votes than the selectmen that were running, they automatically went, even though they didn't run for a selectman, they ran for first selectman, they automatically went there. That was the first change. Then the second change was you could only vote for one selectman. well, Bob was a selectman, and my dear friend, may she rest in peace, Nita Kincaid, was a select woman. And I loved what they both did on the board. I love what they both brought to the town. I wanted to vote. I wanted to give each of them their support. Yes, they were going to be on anyway. They were the only two running, but they didn't need my vote, but they needed my support. And why would I go vote? It's meaningless if, so I really appreciated it when you can vote for two on the selectmen. Now I get to actually vote for those two people. I wish it were that way for something like the registrars. I appreciate Connie and Emily, but I can only vote for one of them. With the Board of Education here, there's going to be 4 of us up in November, and I want to vote for 4 of us. Why can't I vote for 4 of us? That's not going to change anything. If we're 4 and 4, why can't I vote for your seat? Why can't I vote for your seat? Why do I have to choose between these people, between all these people that I respect so much, if they are on the board? And further, I'm unaffiliated. So let's say I decide to run in November. I am not going to get a Democrat endorsement because you have 2 perfectly capable Democratic incumbents on the board. They will put them forward. I'm not going to get a Republican endorsement because there will be 2 running. So I'm going to be kind of left in this bowl on the ballot. I realize I can petition to get on the ballot. I realize that I can, get the signatures and be on the ballot, but there's no, there's not really a path to win. I mean, people make assumptions. Let's face it, not everybody in town knows any of us. Not everybody in town knows that you're on the Board of Education or that I'm on the Board of Education by looking or whatever. So you do kind of have to campaign. So a Democrat in town, or they might see your name, Brian, and they may, and I mean, you got it. You have a D next to your name. So there are people that just vote the party lines, and they can make certain assumptions because they're voting for a Democrat. They can make certain assumptions if they're voting for a Republican, but they see me as an unaffiliated. They don't know. They don't know me. And so, a lot of people don't know me who are voting. And so, maybe we could do meet and greets or something like that. You want to be able to stand on the issues. I'm okay with campaigning. It's part of it. You want them to get to know where you stand on things so they can make informed decisions. So we can make informed decisions. I don't see a consequence of voting for the 4 seats. It's fair, and just, it's okay if not everyone's knocking down the door to get on these boards, but there aren't a problem with filling our seats or the Board of Finance or the Board of Selectmen. There's just not. But it is a deterrent not to have those 4 votes for an unaffiliated to not be endorsed by either party and to try and run. It almost feels like a waste of time. So that's it.
Can I just make one comment on that? I would just like to point out that if you look at the register of voters in the town of North Stonington, an unaffiliated could very easily win. 24% of the registered voters are Democrat. 26% of the registered voters are Republican. 46% of the registered voters in the town of North Stonington are unaffiliated.
Oh, I realize that, but unaffiliated is not a party.
It doesn't need to be a party.
Get on the ballot. And then you can get
I think what
You're-
Lisa's saying is that people who are unaffiliated
I'm
hold
not gonna-
vastly different views.
I'm not going to vote for somebody just because they're unaffiliated. That's not necessarily in line with my views.
But on the contrast to that, you're saying that somebody's going to vote for somebody specifically because they're a Democrat or specifically because they're a Republican. I know Republicans that didn't vote for me because our views are a little bit different on the scale of being a
Well, not every
Republican.
Republican voted for me either, or every Democrat. But people do make certain assumptions about a Democrat on the ballot or a Republican on the ballot. Just, they just do. But if I'm unaffiliated, they don't know, where I lie. And the bottom line is there's no consequence to voting 4 seats if we can keep a 4 and 4 board. If there's no more than 4 of a given party so there's no one party that can have control of the board, then I don't see the harm in doing 4 seats on any board. I would like to see it all over the ballot. I've been talking about this for years. I've had many conversations.
And I think there's some conversation now about the Board of Finance can also have this change. It's the way the ordinances are written. Some of them you can't do anything with. But that idea of 4 and 4 is something that can be written into the ordinance. You can't make it.
I wouldn't want to do 5 and 3. I don't want 5 Democrats.
Right.
And I don't want 5
I
Republicans.
forget the way you can't make it like less restrictive. So you couldn't make it 6 and 2, but you could make it 4 and 4. Thanks, Lisa. And I think Lisa did a better job at explaining the why. That's all. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. Anybody else want to talk anything else about it? Okay. Wait, we have to ask for public comment. I thought you maybe had more.
No.
Any public comment? That's okay too, Chad. I see our only member of the public walking to the back of the room. I don't think he has a comment. Okay. With that, Judy,
I make a motion to adjourn.
all those in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.